What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of LabCast. Today's topic is going to be Pokemon game gimmicks. As always, I'm Vinny in the lab, and this is Rynot. Rynot916 on YouTube, Rynot926 on Twitch. Our links will be in the description, just like every other video. But, Pokemon game gimmicks. What we mean by that is the little mechanics that are added as like a flavor for each gen. So like in Gen 6, you had Mega Evolutions, Gen 7, you had Z moves, and Gen 8, you have Dynamax and Gigantamax. So basically, there's a couple of ways of going about this, and we're going to try to cover it in as many ways as we possibly can within the time that we try to keep these videos. But in general, what do you think of them adding gimmicks to Pokemon? Because we didn't see it before Gen 6. So what do you think about them?
I think it's a nice added flair to the games. It doesn't necessarily feel like the games rely on them to be good in a sense. It just feels like it's an extra cool thing that is starting to make each region a little bit more unique in a sense. Because now that we're into the 8th generation, I feel like you could only do create Pokemon and that's it for so long before that gets stale. So I like that they've started to introduce these these extra gimmicks where we can Mega Evolve our Pokemon, or we can Dynamax and Gigantamax. Even if you also kind of want to toss in regional variants in there.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't really think about it at first, but the Alolans and the Galarians are a little bit of a gimmick. They're becoming less of a gimmick as they do it more, I would say.
It seems like regional variants is going to be kind of almost like a standard and expected thing going forward.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, when it comes down to it, I really like that they've added these to the games. I think it's just an extra cool thing that you can do within each game. It's not necessarily needed, but it's just a cool little thing.
I would argue that it is needed for X and Y, because as we spoke about in our last episode, the Mega Evolutions really were a large part of the decks because they didn't add in a lot of the fluff Pokemon or more Pokemon designs that they normally would. And with such a small deck in X and Y without the Mega Evolutions, and what we're kind of seeing with it now, since Mega Evolutions are no longer a thing, it is kind of a little strange to have such a small deck in comparison to Gen 5 is twice the size of Gen 6. So it is a little weird to all of a sudden have such a small decks going into that. So I think Mega Evolutions are a little more imperative to that gen. I also think that they're probably, I don't know if they're my favorite. I think the Mega Evolution designs are really good. For the most part, at least. I don't think they're all perfect. I don't think they're all amazing, but I think they were good. I don't like that the gimmicks always seem to revolve around with not including Z moves, because that one's kind of an outlier within its own of its own right. It doesn't really fit in with the other two gimmicks, Z moves.
Yeah, no, not really.
Yeah. And but they focus too much on Gen 1. It's always all about Gen 1. And I like Gen 1. I grew up with Gen 1. But because I grew up with Gen 1, I like other gens as well, and they need some attention. At least with Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing, we do have Gen 8 Gigantamaxes. So that's really cool.
Yes.
But in Gen 8, Dynamax is the only non-1 Gen 8 or Gen 1 Pokemon to get a Gigantamax is Garbodor, Gen 5. And that's because the director of the game was the designer of Garbodor. So I don't know. I mean, I like the gimmicks. They kind of, I don't know how to say it. I both like them and don't like them equally, I guess. Because now that Megas are no longer a thing, and they've written Dynamaxes in a way that they can only exist in Galar, it's almost why do it for the longevity of Pokemon? I guess it's just like you said, for a little, to make it more exciting while it's there. But
Yeah.
like then we basically have to forget about it once we move on to the next generation. It's a little strange.
Yeah, and it's like when you look at Mega Evolutions, like they also brought them back into Gen 7. So
Yeah.
when you then looked at the Gen 7 competitive format, it was an absolute mess because you had megas and you had Z moves all in the same format, and it was a nightmare. Like
Yeah.
I never played competitive in Gen 7, but I remember like looking at some of the teams and like watching some of the matches, and I'm just like, this just doesn't feel right.
No,
It
it didn't. Especially towards the end of Ultra Sun and Moon. It
Yeah, oh
just was it was a
my, when
mess.
yeah, because the wormholes in Ultra Sun and Moon brought back all the other legends,
Yep.
which then brought back Primal Kyogre, Primal Groudon, Mega Rayquaza, and Mega Rayquaza was always like arguably the most busted Mega evolution because it didn't require a Mega Stone
Yeah.
to evolve. Mega Rayquaza, I believe it literally just needed to know the move Dragon Ascent,
Yeah.
and you could Mega evolve it. So you could
It
teach
would
it Dragon
automatically
Ascent.
Mega Evolve, I believe, as it went into battle. Or
Uh,
maybe not. Maybe that's the primals I'm thinking of. That's
that's
the
the primals.
primals.
If
Yeah.
they were holding the orbs, they would automatically primal revert.
Yeah.
But Mega Rayquaza, you still have to click the button for it. And that made Mega Rayquaza a little bit interesting to play because when it would Mega Evolve, it would get the Airlock ability, which canceled out all weather.
Yeah.
So it was like Mega Rayquaza was super busted, but you wanted to like unleash it at the right time because especially if the primals were in the format, you didn't want to have your Primal Groudon out on the field at the same time as your Mega Rayquaza because the airlock would cancel out your super harsh intense sun.
Yeah.
So it was just a mess. But then the fact that your Mega Rayquaza could hold an item because it didn't need a
Yeah.
Mega Stone
I
was just
I
was
also didn't play. Um, at this time, I didn't even really try to play competitive until Sword and Shield came out.
Mhm.
But I remember looking at that format and being like, "This is like not good,"
it was a
because
mess.
yeah, you would look at a person's team and it would be like either Kyogre or Groudon, sometimes both, Rayquaza, and then a Tapu, and
Yep.
then like another legend and maybe one non-legend, like if you were lucky. And sometimes you would see two, rarely three, but it was just I remember just looking at it and being like, this is a boring format. It's just like all the same because it was very clear what was best.
Yep.
And I've heard a lot of people like hate on Dynamax and Gigantamax because they say that it's too busted, too strong. But I would just say that like many things are good Dynamax, and some. I mean, not even all the Gigantamax Pokemon are really competitively viable. So like,
Yeah.
it. I think it's way more even, way more neutral. There's a lot more that you can do now, than in that last couple of formats in Ultra Sun and Moon, which by the way went on way too long because Let's Go didn't have a viable competitive scene. So Ultra Sun and Moon was like the longest continuous format we've ever
Yeah.
seen.
We basically had it for an extra year
Yeah.
almost. The other thing about like when you look at megas is a mega would stay a mega the entire battle,
Yeah.
and if you switched it out, it was still mega.
Yep.
So all you had to do was just like click that mega evolve button, or even like again like the primals, they would if they were holding the orbs, they would revert as soon as they would enter the field. Um, and then it was just like, all right, well now my opponent's got like a Mega Rayquaza, a Primal Groudon, and like this is just fun.
Not to
But
mention they had different stats as well, the megas. So like
yeah,
so there was like a stat change on the Pokemon once you mega evolved, which now like if you try to remember like speed ties and like who's faster than who, there's a whole nother set of Pokemon to remember the stats for on top of the Pokemon that you already know. I feel like megas were kind of overwhelming in that sense, especially for people who are less adept at battling.
oh yeah, 100%. Megas required a whole other. They required so much extra knowledge to play because you would not play a Mega Rayquaza the same way you would play a non-Mega Rayquaza. And in all honesty, because it only just needed a move, if you were not running a Rayquaza that could Mega Evolve, like you were just behind,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Mega Rayquaza was like on nearly every team, I remember.
Oh yeah, yeah. When Mega Rayquaza was in the format, it was very very difficult to build a team without Mega Rayquaza because of how insanely broken it was.
Yeah.
It was like if you don't run a team with Mega Rayquaza, you are basically just walking into an event and you're almost conceding because you don't have. It's like when everybody brings like the best weapon and you don't bring it.
Yeah.
You're like I'm gonna try this thing, and it's just like at that point it. And that's the other thing is that it didn't leave room for creativity
Mm-hmm.
because it was like you need Mega Rayquaza.
Yeah, and then
But
you would have to synergize with that as well. Like it, I
exactly.
mean, it was decently splashable as a Pokemon, but like you said, because it had airlock, canceling out weather, you couldn't like just throw Rayquaza on like a rain team, and then like make use of it. I mean, I guess you could. I don't know if that was done, but
You could. So there was you had to be very clutch with the switching
yeah,
because if you had like your Groudon, like your primal Groudon or your primal Kyogre out at the same time as your Rayquaza, you could then like switch out your Rayquaza, and then the primal rain would kick in because Rayquaza is now gone, and then that would really affect the turn. So like because what the primal moves did is when primal Kyogre was out on the field, fire moves just would not work because of the intense rain, and when Groudon was out on the field, water moves wouldn't work because there was the intense sun. So
I do remember switching being like huge in that format. Like
yeah,
there was just switching, which you don't really see as much now in Gen 8, I don't think. I think switching is a lot less key than it was because of, I guess, because of that. Because it,
mainly because of that. Yeah, I mean,
yes.
switching is always going to play a role in competitive. Like you're always gonna, you're sometimes gonna get like those super clutch switches, or you're gonna predict that your opponent, oh, I think they're gonna switch in, so
Mhm.
like I think they're gonna switch in their Tyranitar here to bring up the sand so that their Excadrill is now faster. Because that was something. This is getting a little off topic, but when do we not get off topic? When I believe this is so the way that speed works in competitive now is it works different than how it worked in Gen 7. And so basically what it was whenever you were picking your moves, and once your moves were picked, um, that the order that they would go in was determined based off of your speed when the move was picked. So if something, so basically like
Oh, that's
if,
interesting. I didn't know that
if
they changed that.
yeah, so they changed that with Gen 8. So now it's dynamic in the sense that if I go first and I've got a Venusaur out on the field and I Gigantamax my Venusaur and then Sableye pops the sun, suddenly my Venusaur is now faster than your team, and now my Venusaur is going to go before your team. If that was in Gen 7, even though my Venusaur now is faster,
Oh
it
wow.
would still go after the other Pokemon. But now it works off of a dynamic speed change so that you can mess with the speed
Mid
mid-turn.
bat. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So Tailwind probably wasn't as good in previous gens as it is now.
not really, because then your opponent, or sorry, your teammate wouldn't really like you wouldn't gain the speed benefit until the following turn.
Yeah.
At least for
Interesting.
helping you move faster than your opponent. But now it's like you pop Tailwind, and now if your teammate's faster, they're going to go before the opposing team does.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that at all. But in general, for the gimmicks, I feel like the Dynamax and Gigantamax gimmick is just way more balanced than Megas were, and like that 3-turn limit is a big thing. I really think that that's the crucial thing there, because I mean when a Dynamax Pokemon is out, it's a wrecking ball. Like they're hard to kill. They it's easy to kill with them, but like it's gonna end. So it really can be like the strategy when I was trying to hit Master Tier, for a little while on doubles, uh, really riding out their Dynamax or waiting to Dynamax till your opponent Dynamaxes was a really viable strategy. Like you can't really always overpower a Dynamax Pokemon. Sometimes you can. I mean, there are certain things like a Dynamax Dragapult still gets one shot by like Galarian Darmanitan with Gorilla Tactics. Like, it's still gonna die.
Yeah.
But
there are certain cases where where Dynamaxing isn't a guaranteed way to save your Pokemon from dying.
Yeah. But it definitely helps. Doubling your HP on the spot really changes the flow of things.
It does. The other thing to keep in mind is that, like, with Megas, like we were talking about this, I believe their stats did alter.
They did, yes. Yeah.
But when you Dynamax or Gigantamax, the only thing that changes is your HP.
Yeah.
Everything else about that
the
Pokemon,
power of the moves as well, but
the power of the moves as well, of
but
course,
not stats. Yeah.
To the max moves, but like a Dragapult's defenses are going to be the exact same defenses in and out of Dynamax. They just have a bigger health pool to work with.
Which is why I think we don't see as much play for like Gengar G-Max as we did Mega Gengar, because Mega Gengar I believe had just better stats in general.
Yeah.
So 100%. Yeah, it is interesting.
And the other thing too is like Gengar's G-Max move, like it can be interesting because it locks both your opponents in from being able to switch, which is good in a sense, but because again we're in a format now where, like, again, if you look back at when you had the Primals and Mega Rayquaza in the format where switching was constant,
that would be way better then. Yeah,
it would have been so much better then. It obviously, again, switching is always going to play a role in competitive. I'm not trying to say it's not,
and I'd say more now because of the Tapus than maybe before Crown Tundra came out.
Yes, because of course, yeah, you can then like change the terrain if you want.
Yeah.
And then when Incineroar became legal again, being able to trigger Intimidate, and then Incineroar also having Parting Shot, so it can like dip out and then come back in and get another Intimidate trigger. So, but definitely not as much switching as when you had the Megas, when you had the Primals specifically and Mega Rayquaza in the format. The other thing about the Dynamax moves is if you're crafty enough, you can negate some of their Dynamax moves by, like Scorbunny bouncing, like,
oh yeah,
not Scorbunny, Cinderace.
Yeah,
like every Cinderace knows bounce when you run it in competitive, because that gives you access to max airstream, which boosts your team's speed, which is just super good. So, and because Cinderace is so fast, if you bounce and they went for a max geyser against your Cinderace, like, that doesn't work. And then they don't get the rain because the move didn't connect, or you can still protect. You're still going to take some damage through protect. But you can still block a good portion of that damage. Sometimes you still die because of like 4 times type advantage, but that's gonna happen.
I'm definitely glad they did the 3-turn thing though, because it's definitely a possibility in my mind that they wanted to do it similarly to like how Dynamax raids work, where like you just can't use the max move all the time. I don't know how that would have been decided, but I think it would have just been worse all around, because then you just have this Pokemon with a ton of HP on for way longer, and also it would be easier to predict when someone could use their max move and easier to counter there. So it's really a no-win situation. But I think that the way that Dynamaxes are now, you can both utilize them very well to get a victory, but also it doesn't, just because your opponent Dynamax doesn't mean that you lose, because any Pokemon can Dynamax, and that's kind of back to what we were saying. Like, if you didn't bring a Mega Rayquaza to an Ultra Sun and Moon event, that's it. You're at a disadvantage. But everything could Dynamax, so there's not that inherent, advantage. And Gigantamaxes don't seem to be all that much better than just general Dynamaxes, if they are at all. Some are, of course, but
there's a couple. It's mainly the Kanto starters, because of course, but also Colossal as well, because those 4 Pokemon have the G-Max move of doing additional damage for 4 turns afterwards. So those so that is very, very strong.
They're really annoying, those moves.
It's super annoying. You can get around it by being the same type as them, though. You
won't take I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So basically, Charizard's G-Max Wildfire will only do continuous damage to a Pokemon if it doesn't have if it's not a fire type. And same thing with Blastoise and Venusaur and Colossal. I believe it only does it if it's not a rock type.
Huh. Yeah.
So you've got ways to get around that there. But like other G-Maxes, like G-Max Centiskorch, Centiskorch in general is just not used.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really have the stats, but like
4
G-Max
times rock weakness is a auto loss in doubles.
You need to have so much else going for you.
Yeah.
In order to be considered if you're 4 times weak to rock, because
is
rock
there anything
always going to be a thing.
Is there anything 4 times weak to rock that is competitively viable?
Not anymore, because Lando came back.
What was there though?
Charizard.
Oh yeah, but interestingly enough, because I played Sandstorm, I played Tyranitar and Excadrill.
You didn't have a problem with
it.
Yeah,
every time I saw a Charizard, I was like, I guess I win. I mean,
like, oh sweet, free victory.
Yeah, the Inferno thing where like the damage over time with the fire was a problem sometimes.
It was a problem sometimes, and in all honesty, there was a time period where Charizard was used as just Dynamax Charizard more so than G-Max Charizard, because for the simple reason that G-Max Charizard, but G-Max Charizard can't set the sun, because all your fire moves turn into G-Max Wildfire, and that doesn't set up the sun. It's because it's not max flare.
Also, I mean, there was the factor that you literally were not allowed to use Gigantamax Solar Power Charizard the first couple of seasons.
Yeah, if you wanted to use a G-Max Charizard, it had to be Blaze.
Yeah.
Which nobody really liked using that ability because Solar Power was so much better.
Yeah.
Especially when you comboed it with Life Orb, like Charizard would just melt stuff.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it definitely hit hard, but I played basically the same team the whole time, so it wasn't too bad for me. And then when I switched teams, I was just like memeing with G-Max Lapras or G-Max Pikachu. So G-Max Lapras with the Max Geyser was really helpful. And then G-Max Pikachu with the double paralysis was so good. I love that move. It's just too weak. It just gets killed too quick, Pikachu.
Yeah, unfortunately. Even if you Eviolite it, but then because it's Pikachu,
more
people
orb thing, right?
Yeah, they go for Light Ball or whatever it's called. Yeah, it's just an all-round a better move or a better held item for Pikachu, because then the Eviolite it's just going to make you survive a little bit longer, but then Pikachu's damage output is not going to be where it needs to be because it's a basic.
Yeah, it's very true. So we are already over 20 minutes on this episode. That one kind of flew.
Really?
There's obviously a gimmick we didn't really talk about. That was Z moves, and there was a reason why we didn't talk about it. There's no reason to talk about it.
There's no reason to talk about Z moves.
In general, yeah, they're in general.
You could do with them. I mean, Eevee's was like the most broken.
That's what I was about to say too. Eevee's was pretty cool, but I mean, if we're considering it a gimmick, the regional forms is probably my favorite thing that they've done, and I hope that they continue to do that.
Me too. It's a cool way to because like when you look at the regional forms, I never used a Zigzagoon. I would never use a Zigzagoon in a Gen 3 playthrough.
No.
But Galarian Zigzagoon is amazing, and I love it.
Yeah, Obstagoon is just amazing. I think that's the best thing that they've done too, is adding regional evolutions.
Yes, and that's not something we saw in Alola.
Yeah. And let's hope it's not a gimmick for Gen 8.
Yeah, I hope that that's something that they continue with going forward. I would love to see Dunsparce get a Gen 9 regional evolution.
Gross. No, thank you.
Make it happen, Game Freak.
No, thanks. Make it happen. Let's just have Audino evolve into Chansey, and then everybody can be happy. All right. Well, that's it for this episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will be back next week with another video. See you guys soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.